This blurry photo right here saved Airbnb from total failure. They were broke, investors ghosted them, and yet this $10 picture changed the way millions of people travel forever. It turned a living room with 3 airbeds from Walmart into a company worth over $100 billion, all because of that one picture. We all know Airbnb's success story.
It became one of the most successful companies of the decade.
But today, let me take you back to version 1.0. After thinking, how can I get in touch with their CEO and even chasing him down at home, I somehow managed to get an interview with the man himself. Please welcome Brian Chesky. Well, let's call it AI Chesky, but the story 100% real.
Hello, what's up, Brian?
I'm great, Yan, and I love your French accent. I've got about 12 minutes, so go ahead, hit me.
So Brian, how did it all start?
So first, let me tell you this story. My parents were both social workers. One day, my mom told me, I chose a job I loved, but it didn't pay, so make sure yours does. I said, I'm gonna be an artist. She looked at me and said, fantastic, you just picked the only job in America that pays less than mine. Turns out, she wasn't wrong. 3 years after graduation, in October 2007, I was broke, living with my roommate, Joe Gebbia, in a tiny apartment on Rausch Street in San Francisco. We were both designers, which is a nicer way of saying unemployed with expensive art school debt. Our rent had just gone up by 25%. We had less than $1,000 between us. I remember looking at our bank account and thinking, okay, we've got about 4 weeks to figure this out. We started eating toast for dinner. Joe tried selling old design books on Craigslist. Then one day he saw a blog post. A big design conference was coming to town, and every hotel in the city was completely sold out. He looked at me and said, half joking, what if we blew up some air mattresses and charged people to sleep here? I was like, to strangers? And we laughed, but we bought 3 airbeds. Joe made a logo. Our friend Nathan Blacharczyk helped build a basic website. It was minimal, but it worked. We called it airbedandbreakfast.com. Yeah, I know, a bold name, right? There were definitely airbeds. The breakfast part was more of a concept. We emailed a few design blogs, and then we waited. Honestly, we thought this is going to be awkward, maybe even dangerous, probably stupid. But then something happened. People booked. 3 complete strangers from different parts of the country paid us $80 a night to sleep in our living room. Picture this, 2 broke designers, 3 airbeds from Walmart, and 3 guests living in our apartment. I still remember them, Kat, Michael, and Amol.
We are going for a short tour of San Francisco today.
Amol told us he clicked on the website just because he liked the logo. I mean, really? That should have been the end of the story. But it wasn't, because a few days later, the emails started coming in from Paris, from Sao Paulo, from Mumbai. Can I do this in my city? That's when something clicked. So I go home for the holidays. We're at the dinner table and someone asks, so Brian, what do you do now? I say proudly, I'm an entrepreneur. Straight up, my lovely mom just goes, no, you're not. You're unemployed. After that trip, I couldn't stop thinking about airbed and breakfast. Something had shifted. It was like an obsession. I started asking myself, what if this wasn't just about beds? We got back to San Francisco, fired up, new logo, new layout, new site, and a big new event coming up, South by Southwest. I told Joe, this is our moment. I literally said, we're gonna be the Beatles of tech. And you know what happened, Yan? 2 fucking bookings.
One of which was Brian. We were not met with success. It did not take off like a rocket ship. I would call it a miserable failure.
We were back where we started. Only now we had no money, no users, and about $20,000 in credit card debt.
So that's when you decided to take some pictures?
That's when we decided to sell cereal.
Wait, what? You sold cereal?
I mean, when you've got no traction, no investors, no milk in the fridge, cereal becomes a business plan, Jan. You know what I mean? It was November 2008. Obama
Hi, everybody.
versus McCain.
Thank you for having me.
The country was divided, and we were still broke, Like toast for dinner broke, so we made our own boxes of cereal to raise some cash. We bought the cheapest cereal we could find, designed the boxes. That's when my mom said, "Yep, you're definitely unemployed." We made 2 boxes, Obama O's, The Breakfast of Change, and Captain McCain's A Maverick in Every Bite. And somehow it worked. We sold 1,000 boxes, $40 each, $30,000 in 24 hours. We were on national TV. And for one brief moment, we felt like we'd made it, except we still couldn't raise a single dollar from investors. I remember this one pitch. We're sitting across from this guy trying to explain how strangers could rent out air mattresses in their apartments. He's sipping his smoothie. 5 minutes in, he stands up and goes, "I need to move my car." We never saw him again till today. That was our first pitch. Can you imagine how painful that was? That's when we heard about this thing called Y Combinator and we applied. Y Combinator is like American Idol for startups. You walk in with just an idea and 10 minutes to convince some of the smartest people in Silicon Valley that you're not completely insane.
Yahoo, Google, Facebook, and Apple all got started this way. None of these companies were even supposed to be companies at first. They were all just side projects.
This man, it's Paul Graham. You know, when we pitched the idea behind Airbed and Breakfast, his first reaction was, people are actually doing this, sleeping in strangers' homes? And we said, yes. And then he goes, well, what's wrong with them? At that point, we thought we'd blown it. We were packing up to leave. And then Joe pulls something out of his bag, our box of cereal, Obama O's. Paul goes, what's this? That's how we funded the company, because no one gave us money. He stares at us and then says, if you can get people to pay $40 for a $4 box of cereal, maybe, just maybe, you can convince strangers to live together.
Phone rings. It's Paul Graham. He's calling to tell us that we've been accepted to Y Combinator. What we later found out is that the reason that Paul let us in wasn't because he thought our idea was amazing. He actually thought it was kind of weird. He let us in because he saw that with the breakfast cereal, we could figure out how to do anything. And that's how we got into Y Combinator.
Boom! We're in. $20,000 in funding, 6% equity, 3 months to prove we weren't just serial hustlers with a website. Before we left, Paul gave us one last piece of advice. It's better to have 100 people who love you than 1,000,000 people who just sort of like you. That may have been the best piece of advice I ever got. We stopped trying to go big and started trying to go deep.
Interesting. But what does it mean?
Good question, Yanni. I'm starting to love this thing we have here. So most of our early users were in New York, and every weekend, Joe and I flew out there, couch surfing for real, and started visiting hosts. And we kept hearing the same 2 problems. I don't know how much to charge. Are my photos okay? Spoiler alert, they were shitty. Sorry, but really. So I borrowed a DSLR from a friend, and I did it myself. I was CEO on Friday and photographer on Saturday. And then one day I took a picture, just one. It wasn't sharp, it wasn't professional, but it showed something. Crazy how that one picture unlocks something this big.
So how did that one picture change everything?
To get how, you got to understand where we were. Back then, people were uploading photos taken with flip phones. No iPhone, no apps like Photoroom. You couldn't tell if the place was a rental or a crime scene. We realized photography was a huge problem.
The site didn't look serious, almost like a joke.
I think a lot of design requires imagination and creativity.
But I didn't know much about photography, so I watched a couple of tutorials on YouTube to know the basic settings and just went for it.
The flat wasn't anything special, the kind of place 2 broke guys in their 20s would share in New York. No art on the walls, no fancy decor, just functional. But I remember opening the windows to let the light in, found a decent angle, took the shot, and uploaded the photos. The next day, bookings doubled. That one listing got 3 requests in just a few hours. And that's when it hit us. It wasn't about fancy features or code. That one photo changed how people felt because it looked real. Trust is the real product. A good photo whispers, you're safe here.
And when a new host came to the site, they said, oh, well, I guess I need to have really nice photos to be in the part of this marketplace. And we started to see the number of reservations go up.
When Joe's smile like that, you know that money is coming. And he was right. After that, things actually started to move. People were booking. And for the first time, investors weren't just smiling politely, they were actually interested. That's when Sequoia stepped in. They gave us $600,000, which felt like $1 billion at the time. Joe and I were finally able to buy some milk for our cereal. Even my parents started to chill. I was officially an adult because I had health insurance card. Now, at that moment, when I realized we weren't just building a website, we were building a feeling, one that said, you belong here.
You said it's not about tech, it's about trust. What did you mean?
Yeah, I think that one sentence explains everything. When it comes to staying in someone else's home, trust is everything. That one image we took, it made people feel something. It bridged the gap between digital and physical. Like, maybe this wasn't a scam. Maybe they could actually do this. I believe that people don't buy technology. They buy what they believe in. Eventually, we scaled the photography program globally. Yes, it cost us, but it made us even more. Hosts got better photos. Travelers got more confident. Bookings went up. What more could we ask for? Because when your product lives online, your photo is the product.
Let me show you.
In August 2009, our weekly revenue jumped from $1,000 to $10,000, and our weekly booking volume reached nearly $100,000. Not bad, right? It gave us what Paul Graham calls a glimmer of hope. And once you see a glimmer, you run toward it. You don't need to think about what 1 million people want. Just solve a problem for you and your best friend. We thought Airbnb would help us pay rent while we looked for the big idea. Turns out Airbnb was the big idea.
And the rest, Brian?
The rest is history, my brother. IPO, COVID, 80% loss in 4 months, and a comeback. You know, the usual startup stuff.
Wow, that was an epic ride. Thank you so much, Brian, for sharing your story.
My pleasure, Yanni. Before I go, what's the name of the show again?
It's called That One Picture.